My fiancée, whom I had been engaged to for many years, actually threw me into the countryside, all for the sake of her white moonlight, and left me to fend for myself there. 3 years passed. She returned, this time with her white moonlight in tow, and arrogantly said, "It's been 3 years now. Even a dog would have learned to be obedient by now. Don't you think? I've only done all of this for your own good. If you don't change your stubborn ways, then don't even dream of becoming my husband, Liu Ruyan." Everyone around us thought that I would surely break down and pour out all the grievances of the past 3 years, sharing my pain and longing for her. Then they imagined I would cling to her, unwilling to let go. But instead, I just smiled calmly. "Sorry, Miss Liu. I've already gotten married. I just returned from filming." From far away, I saw a dozen luxury cars parked in front of the old Liu family mansion. All of them are ones I haven't seen in the past few years. As I reached the front gate of the Liu family estate, I could hear the loud voices coming from inside. 3 years. I wonder how that young master of the Liu family has changed. Has he turned into some backwoods bumpkin? What kind of young master was he, really? Just an orphan taking shelter at the Liu family, still thinking of himself as some rich young heir. He's nothing. He has no blood relation to the Liu family whatsoever. The Liu family was just being kind to him. If not for that, he wouldn't even be worth as much as a beggar. Shinji always had a rather bad temper. I thought after these 3 years, he must have realized his mistake by now. A deep male voice suddenly interrupted those negative remarks, bringing a moment of quiet to the courtyard. The voice sounded somewhat familiar to me. It was Lin Xian's. The white moonlight held in the palm of his hand. 3 years ago, after his father passed away in a car accident, he was taken in by the Liu family, while I was sent to the countryside. When I was sent away, she said, "Xian has lost his family, yet you're still speaking so viciously. He's always been so kind to you. Do you have any conscience at all? Once you've learned to behave properly, once you become sensible, I'll bring you back. Otherwise, you'll stay there for the rest of your life. I'm doing this for your own good. If you don't change your ways, don't ever expect to become my husband, Liu Ruyan." For my own good? That sounds so sweet. For my own good? It means still siding with Lin Xian in such circumstances. For my own good? It means throwing me into the countryside and forgetting all about me. She knew perfectly well that at that time, my emotions were on the verge of collapse. Now, hearing these words, all I can feel is sarcasm. It's also because Xian is kind-hearted that he didn't hold it against me. If it were me, I would have made sure he stayed there for a few years. Lin Xian said softly. Qingji is, after all, still a Liu family member. As he spoke, his voice grew even quieter. "Xian, don't be sad. That fool has already been punished. What do you think his reaction will be when he sees us? Don't even need to ask. He'll definitely collapse and cry. Then he'll kneel and beg Liu Ruyan to take him back." Liu Ruyan snorted coldly. 3 years have passed. Even a dog should have learned to behave by now, right? If not, then he'll just stay here and be reformed. Around me, a chorus of voices chimed in agreement. I actually kind of hope he hasn't learned to behave. Then I'll never have to see him again for the rest of my life. Yeah. That pitiful, servile attitude of his. I can't stand looking at him. But I remember you two still had an engagement, right? A voice rang out, tinged with a hint of confusion. Upon hearing this, Lin Xian turned his head to look at Liu Ruyan, his eyes filled with expectation. An engagement? Let's see how he performs. After hearing Liu Ruyan's words, Lin Xian's gaze shifted away, a little disappointed. As I listened to this, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I didn't try to hide the laughter, and the sound was carried by the rising breeze into the small courtyard. It startled a group of small turtles inside. The person closest to the door turned around and looked at me. With surprise and confusion, they shouted, Lin Qingji? Their shout drew the attention of everyone in the courtyard. Is it really him, Lin Qingji? How is this possible? Wasn't he supposed to have turned into a country bumpkin? I could hear their discussions clearly. I also understood why they were so shocked. In their imagination, having been sent to the countryside for 3 years, I must have long since become a dusty, worn-out, weathered countryman, instead of looking like I do now, wearing a dark-colored windbreaker, paired with matching shoes, and on my feet, a pair of the latest casual shoes. Around my neck hung what looked like an expensive camera, and in my hand, I held a cup of coffee. I didn't look like a country bumpkin at all. Liu Ruiyan's gaze slowly fell on me. She too was a little surprised. Lin Qingji? She called my name, her tone distant. It was worlds apart from how she spoke to Lin Ziyan. In my memory, I had once been upset about this, and we had argued because of it. But now, I didn't care anymore. Miss Liu. I took a sip of coffee and greeted her politely. Upon hearing my words, Liu Ruyan slightly furrowed her brows. Zhuan Nian, is it? Do you really need to be so distant? Is this how you're going to speak to me? Seems like the time was still too short. You haven't learned your lesson yet. If you keep acting like this, I really will break off the engagement. I gave her a faint glance. What gave her the idea that, after 3 years, I would still have feelings for her? When I was 10, I became an orphan. It was then that the Liu family's grandfather took me in, and right then and there, he announced my engagement to Liu Ruyan. From that moment on, I knew Liu Ruyan would be my future wife. So, in her gentleness, I allowed myself to slowly fall in love with her. As my feelings deepened, she once told me she loved me. She also said she wanted to be my wife. Until Lin Ziyan was brought into the Liu family, everything changed. I watched as the care that was once mine was gradually taken away. Watched as she unconditionally favored him. I argued. We had cold wars. I even deliberately sought out trouble with Lin Ziyan. But without exception, all I received in return were accusations and anger. Later, Lin Ziyan's watch went missing. Liu Ruyan immediately came to me, questioning me. Though I didn't like Lin Ziyan, I had never sunk so low as to steal from him. Moreover, during that time, my little cat, whom I had raised for 8 years, became ill and had to be hospitalized. That cat had been a birthday gift from Liu Ruyan. She had given it to me, saying, "This is a symbol of our love. To take care of it." I rented a place near the pet hospital. I hadn't been back to the Liu family home for a long time. I lifted my head to face Liu Ruyan, but to my surprise, his watch was found in a jacket I hadn't worn in a long time. Liu Ruyan slapped me, and even broke the bracelet my parents had prepared as a gift for their future daughter-in-law. I watched as the bracelet shattered into pieces on the floor. I dashed toward Lin Ziyan like a madwoman. In the chaos, Lin Ziyan tumbled down the stairs, and then I was sent to the countryside by Liu Ruyan. And my little cat didn't make it through that summer. Seeing that I wasn't speaking, Liu Ruyan's expression turned impatient. Just as she was about to explode, I raised the ring in my hand. "Sorry, Miss Liu, I'm already married." Liu Ruyan's expression darkened the moment she heard that, her brows furrowing even tighter. Lin Ziyan stepped forward, wrapping an arm around Liu Ruyan's shoulder, looking at me with the same gaze one might give a mischievous little brother. "Qingji, don't lie. I heard from Ruyan that she froze your bank card. So how have you been living all these years? You're still young. Don't let those unscrupulous women deceive you." As soon as those words left his mouth, Liu Ruyan's gaze shifted to my clothes. Her eyes gradually turned cold. Perhaps she had just remembered how she'd cut off all my financial resources. In their eyes, without the Liu family's money, I didn't deserve to wear such fine clothes. All of his friends were looking at me with mocking expressions. Someone spoke up. Lin Qingji, you haven't been kept, have you? In this poor, remote countryside, your sugar daddy wouldn't happen to be one of those widows whose husbands have passed away, would it? Liu Ryan's face instantly darkened. Her entire face twisted with fury as she glared at me. Lin Qingji, are you still a man? It's fine if you have no shame. But don't disgrace the Liu family's name. Seeing her like this, it was clear she thought I had willingly sunk to such depths, becoming someone's mistress. But, Liu Ryan, how many years have we known each other? Even if you dislike me so much, you should know my character. Is this how you see me? Am I really the kind of person who would become someone's mistress for money? Am I really the kind of person who would become someone's mistress for money? I looked around the room and said coldly, I should be the one asking if you have any shame. Did you come all this way just to act crazy? I, Lin Qingji, am not like you people. I don't rely on anyone, not even the Liu family. I can still live perfectly well on my own. Liu Ryan probably never expected me to retort. She froze for a moment before letting out a cold laugh. Not relying on the Liu family? With you, Lin Qingji. Don't overestimate yourself. I know what you're really thinking. You just want to attract my attention, don't you? Upon hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh in anger. This person seemed to have no understanding of the human condition. Attract her attention? Does she even deserve it? I splashed the coffee in my hand straight at her. Liu Ryan wasn't prepared, so the coffee splashed all over her face. Ryan, Lin Ziyan, seeing what happened, quickly rushed to shield her in his arms. Liu Ryan shoved him away, wiping the remaining coffee off her face with a swift motion. Then she raised her hand toward me. I quickly took a step back. Letting out a cold snort, I said, What? Miss Liu, are you planning to hit me again? Liu Ryan paused for a moment. She took a deep breath. Lin Qingji, you've really got some nerve. Since that's the case, you might as well stay here for the rest of your life. With that, she stormed off. As the main character left, the lackeys who had come to watch the drama naturally followed suit. Lin Ziyan was the last to leave. When he walked past me, he whispered, Lin Qingji, I thank you. If it weren't for you, Ryan would never have seen my good side. I didn't respond. The things you're so proud of are exactly the trash I threw away long ago. If you enjoy picking through trash, then by all means, take it. After they left, I grabbed the groceries and walked toward the house across from the Liu family's estate. Inside, a woman was on a conference call. When she saw me walk in, she muted the call, then smiled and leapt into my arms. Why are you back so soon? I'm starving. I smiled, wrapping my arms around her. I've been out there working hard all day, and you didn't even make me a meal. Don't you want to reward me? The woman wrinkled her little nose, innocently saying, But I can't cook. How about I just make you some instant noodles? I turned and bent down, pinching her nose. You little troublemaker, when have you ever cooked for us? I heard a lot of noise outside just now. What happened? Thinking back to what had just occurred, my expression darkened. Liu Ryan came. She said she wanted to take me back, but I gave her a little lesson. Upon hearing that, the woman frowned. That girl, Ryan. It's probably a good thing you taught her a lesson, otherwise she'd never know her place. I looked at her, raising an eyebrow. Just like that, she smiled slightly, her hand mischievously tracing circles on my chest. I know all about your past with her, though I'm a little jealous. It doesn't matter, the most important thing is, she's no longer around and I'm the one here with you now. Saying this, her lips were already moving toward mine. Her kiss, gentle as water, slowly melted me. It made it impossible for me to resist, and I found myself completely immersed in it. The next time I saw you, Ryan, was a month later. At Zhang Lei's engagement banquet, he was my best friend. This engagement was the reason he had specifically invited me to the countryside. Unable to refuse him, I reluctantly agreed. When I saw you, Ryan, and Lin Zion again, it was exactly what I had expected. As soon as Zhang Lei saw them, he immediately pulled me behind him, like a hawk protecting its chicks. He gestured for Wen Lan to take care of them. Wen Lan was his fiancée, and also Liu Ryan's friend. As for him, he led me to a corner. Qingji, sorry about this. I didn't realize they'd be here too. I smiled and shook my head. I've been in the Liu family for so many years. Our circles overlap a lot. It's normal that they'd be here. It's fine. I stopped caring about it a long time ago. I reassured him. After all, I'm already married. Zhang Lei was taken aback. His face showed disbelief as he stared at me. You're married? When did this happen? Why didn't I know about it? Half a year ago. Zhang Lei stared at me for a long time, then suddenly burst out laughing. As expected of you. I knew it. With your kind of character, there's no way you'd hang your life on a crook tree like Liu Ryan. That's more like it. A woman like Liu Ryan. We don't need her. Saying this, he playfully thumped my chest. I knew. He was genuinely happy for me. When Lin Zion first appeared, he'd been urging me to let go, but I couldn't let go of that obsession. I was determined to crash into the wall headfirst. Now, I had finally let it go. After the laughter subsided, he shot me a playful glare. So why didn't you bring your wife to introduce her to me? Or do you not see me as a good brother? She's on a business trip. I smiled apologetically. She won't be back until later tonight. Next time, I'll bring her along and we can all have a meal together. Zhang Lei nodded in satisfaction. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand and walked to the center of the crowd, taking the microphone. He drew everyone's attention. With a radiant smile, he announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have one more piece of good news to share today." He pulled me to his side and introduced me with great solemnity. This is my best friend, Lin Qingji. He's married. Let's all congratulate him. As his words fell, the room went silent. Those who would be attending this engagement banquet were basically all from the circle. Many people knew that the eldest daughter of the Liu family, Liu Ryan's fiancée, was named Lin Qingji. However, they hadn't heard anything about Liu Ryan getting married. Zhang Lei, who loved to stir up trouble, looked around the room and asked with a smile, "Well, my brother is getting married, and you're not happy?" Everyone snapped back to reality and laughed, responding in unison. How could we not be happy? We're thrilled. Congratulations. Wishing you a lifetime of happiness. May you have a child soon. Amidst the cheers and blessings, I simply gave a faint smile and nodded. It was at that moment that Lin Zion approached me, holding a wine glass. He looked at me with a face full of worrying. "Qingji, you've been living in the countryside for the past 2 years, and now you suddenly want to get married. Have you been deceived by those bad people in the countryside? I know you're still angry that Ryan sent you to the countryside, but she did it for your own good. You're still young. Don't let your anger lead you into making impulsive decisions. Marriage is a serious matter. You must be cautious." Lin Zion then gave me a long, stern look. Are you trying to control me too much? Even if I were marrying a pig, it's none of your business. I couldn't help but interrupt him. I really hated him. He clearly didn't like me, yet always tried to act like he was considering my well-being. Back when I was at the Liu family, he had been just like this. And then, I gradually became the person that everyone in the Liu family disliked, while he became the epitome of grace and charm in everyone's eyes. Having seen this act so many times, I simply found it boring. When I interrupted him, Lin Zion's expression darkened. At that moment, Liu Ryan coincidentally walked over. She looked at me, and after a long pause, she slowly spoke. "Lin Qingji, that's enough. After the banquet ended, I stood alone by the roadside, waiting for a cab. Liu Ryan's car stopped right in front of me. Her expression was cold and indifferent. "Get in the car." I shook my head. "No need. My wife will come to pick me up." Upon hearing this, Liu Ryan sneered. "Lin Qingji, how long are you going to keep pretending? You might fool others, but everyone in Jiangshang knows how much you love me, even to the point of wanting to die. With someone like you, who would be willing to marry you? Hurry up and get in the car, and I won't make a fuss about you running back to Jiangshang on your own." When Liu Ryan spoke, her tone was far from pleasant. Seeing me still standing there unmoving, her brows furrowed tightly. A trace of disgust appeared on her face. "Are you really playing the role of a mistress? Who's so blind to fall for you? Listen to me." I gave a faint smile. "Miss Liu Ryan, is it possible that you're the one acting as the mistress? Otherwise, why do you think everyone around you is a mistress? Only those with dirty minds will see others as tainted." Upon hearing this, Liu Ryan looked like she had just swallowed a fly. She glared at me fiercely. "Lin Qingji, how did you become like this?" Seeing her look of heart-wrenching sorrow, anyone who didn't know would think she was truly heartbroken. But I hadn't changed at all. I've always been mischievous since I was a child. For that, my mother had scolded me many times. Later, when I went to the Liu family, my nature never changed. I remember the first time I snapped back at someone in the Liu family. Liu Ryan was standing by, laughing. She said, "A man has to have masculinity. Otherwise, he's not handsome." But later, when Lin Ziyan showed up, she started complaining that I wasn't mature enough, not steady enough. So I just held back all my sharp edges. Now, I'm no longer willing to change for her. Lin Ziyan had been sitting in the front passenger seat, quietly listening to the conversation between Liu Ryan and me. When he saw Liu Ryan like this, a glint of amusement flashed in his eyes. Then, he looked at me and tried to persuade me. "Qingji, how can you speak to Ryan like that? She's doing this for your own good." "Shut up." I rolled my eyes, glaring at him in silence. I didn't say a word. "Nobody's selling you as a mute. What does it have to do with you if I'm talking to Liu Ryan?" Lin Ziyan was choked by my words, his expression turning awkward. At that moment, a pink sports car happened to stop behind us, without even looking at the two of them. I strode over and got into the sports car. As the engine roared to life, I could still hear Liu Ryan cursing angrily. That night, I received a call from an unknown number. I picked up and found that the caller was Fang Yi, Liu Ryan's close friend. "Lin Qingji, what are you doing?" I turned off the music, putting the child to sleep. There was a brief pause on the other end, and then a confused voice asked, "Putting the child to sleep? Is it a human baby?" I nodded. "Of course." Fang Yi replied, "Stop joking. Juwan has never been pregnant. How could you have a child?" I replied calmly, "Children don't only come from Liu Ryan." Fang Yi raised her voice. "Seriously? You're really married now? And you have a child?" I countered. "Is that so surprising? I can't be married and have a child." "No, it's not that," Fang Yi said. "It's just that you and Ryan have been betrothed for so long, and you've always liked her. How could you suddenly get married? You must be lying." At her words, I smiled. Why does everyone think I'm lying? Marriage is a big deal. How could I lie about something like this? I paused for a moment. "When the wedding happens, I'll invite you to come." As soon as I finished speaking, there was a loud noise on the other end of the line. And then, the call was abruptly disconnected. I didn't think much of it. Most of Liu Ryan's friends, 9 out of 10, thought I wasn't good enough for her. Even when I had the best relationship with Liu Ryan, when Lin Ziyan appeared, they looked down on me even more. I had heard them talk badly about me many times. Before long, another call came through. It was from Liu Ryan. I knew immediately who it was. I answered the call. But before I could say anything, she spoke first. Lin Chengji, tell me that the child isn't yours. I found it somewhat amusing. Are you okay? Liu Ryan's voice grew even angrier. Lin Chengji, I'm telling you to say that the child isn't yours. Her voice was loud, so much so that it could be heard without even putting it on speakerphone. I pulled the phone away from my ear. Coldly, I said, if you don't have anything else to say, I'll hang up. You didn't understand what I just said. You really don't understand? Where are you now? I had known Liu Ryan for many years, and I had seen her throw tantrums countless times. So hearing her scream, I remained completely unmoved. She kept asking questions on the other end. And suddenly, the phone was yanked from behind me. Then, I heard Yun Suwan's gentle voice. Lin Chengji is going to sleep with me now. We can talk about this another day. After saying that, without waiting for the person on the other end to react, she hung up the phone. At that moment, I bumped into a pair of smiling eyes. She jumped into my arms and rubbed her face against my neck. In her breath, I could still smell the scent of her body wash. It was a fresh peach fragrance. You need to try harder. Otherwise, there will be no child to pamper you. I cupped her small bottom in my hand and chuckled. I'm just kidding. Yun Suwan lowered her head and kissed my lips. Murmuring, it won't be long now. 3 days later, I returned to the Liu family. Yun Suwan and I went to visit grandfather Liu. It was he who brought me into the Liu family years ago. Over the years, he had always treated me like a beloved grandson. However, his health had greatly declined in recent years, and he often went abroad for treatment. This time, he had returned to celebrate his 80th birthday. I heard that after the celebration, he would go abroad again for further treatment. After seeing grandfather Liu, Yun Suwan received a call and went to the back garden. I waited for her in a corner. I thought you wouldn't come back. At the sound of the voice, I turned and saw Liu Ryan standing behind me, her delicate face frozen with a cold expression. I ignored her frosty demeanor and smiled. Grandfather's birthday. Of course, I had to come back. By the way, I brought my wife to meet him. Liu Ryan looked at me coldly. How? Do you have a new trick up your sleeve? You've been in the countryside for all these years. Have you been thinking about how to provoke me once you get back? I'm telling you, don't get your hopes up. I will never marry you. Wait, I'll go tell grandfather now to cancel the engagement. As she spoke, she glanced over my shoulder. What's the matter? You didn't bring that old woman's bastard child with you? You really make me sick. Get out of the Liu family right now. As soon as she finished speaking, a lazy, soft voice came from behind. Oh, the eldest daughter of the Liu family sure has a lot of power. I didn't even know that you were the one in charge of the Liu family. Liu Ryan froze for a moment, then turned to look at the person who spoke. Aunt? Yun Suwan walked up to my side, taking my hand, looking at my niece in front of me. I dared not call you aunt. You dared to kick out your uncle, huh? Liu Ryan's face turned ashen, her gaze fixed on the hands that Yun Suwan and I were holding. She stuttered as she spoke. You say he's my uncle? Lin Chengji, are you? Yun Suwan gave her a light glance, her voice turning colder. He's your uncle. Are you just going to call him by his name? Liu Ryan's face turned a sickly color, but soon she composed herself. Even during the family banquet afterward, she appeared calm the entire time, as if nothing that had just happened bothered her. When the birthday celebration ended, Yun Suwan went to get the car, and I stood at the door waiting for her. While waiting, Liu Ryan suddenly appeared and dragged me into a secluded corner. Her eyes cold as ice, she gritted her teeth and said, Lin Qingji, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? You and Anne are deliberately putting on a show for me, right? Is that it? I looked at her. You're overthinking it. If I were putting on a show, I wouldn't have come here with her. After all, the rift between the two families started because of Liu Ryan's parents' divorce. The two families have never gotten along since then. If it weren't for me, young Suwon wouldn't have voluntarily come here. And besides, grandfather, he has been very kind to me. No matter what, I would never deceive her. Liu Ryan has always known about these things. But right now, she's just too angry to think straight. She sneered. So you're just trying to get back at me, huh? Is that it? Getting back at me for leaving you in the countryside because of Lin Ziyan? Lin Qingji, I told you, as long as you behaved, you would become my husband, Liu Ryan. What are you doing now? Looking at her reddening eyes, I suddenly remembered the day Lin Ziyan first came to the Ryan Liu family. Had promised me. She said that no matter how many Lin Ziyans there were, none of them could compare to me. She said I would always be the one she loved the most. But later, for Lin Ziyan, she blamed me again and again. In the end, she even hit me. I still remember the crisp sound of the jade bracelet shattering on the floor. It was like my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I shifted my gaze, looking at the vibrant flowers blooming not far away. Liu Ryan, from the moment you sheltered Lin Ziyan behind you, you should have known. There's no future for us. Lin Qingji, I am not a generous person. I can't just forget the past. So between us, it's like that shattered jade bracelet. It's impossible to go back to how things were. Now I'm married to Yun Suan, and you have Lin Ziyan by your side. Let's just live our separate lives. A complex expression flashed across Liu Ryan's face. She remained silent for a moment, then said, Lin Qingji, are you really this heartless? I did have feelings for you. Really? I just felt sorry for Lin Ziyan. His parents are both gone. Her voice trembled slightly, as though she was trying hard to control her emotions. Upon hearing this, I could only mockingly smile. Lin Ziyan is pitiful because he's lost his parents. What about me? I lost my parents when I was 5. Then, when I was 10, my grandfather, who I relied on, passed away too. Am I not pitiful? How biased can a person be? To say something like that? If she really had feelings for me, how could she have ignored me for so many years, not even bothering to ask about me? I looked at her and softly asked, Liu Ryan, do you remember why I came to the Liu family? Liu Ryan's body stiffened, and her face turned as pale as a ghost. She opened her mouth, wanting to explain, but in the end, she didn't say a word. I didn't even look at her expression. I simply rolled up my sleeves and showed her the scars on my arms. Perhaps you don't know. When you first sent me to the countryside, I fell into depression. I tried to end it several times. So many times, I thought I wasn't going to make it. But thankfully, I got through it in the end and met someone who truly loves me. Just then, I saw the flash of headlights in the distance. It was Yun Suwan. She was here. I'll go now. Liu Ryan lowered her head, remaining silent. I shook off her grip on my arm and turned to leave. I didn't look back until the car was far away. Only then did I receive a message from Liu Ryan. Lin Qingji, you said you would marry only me in this lifetime. Yes, I did say that. When I loved Liu Ryan the most, back then, I thought I would definitely marry Liu Ryan one day. I thought Liu Ryan would only love me in this life. So I made that vow. But now, I've broken my promise, because you were the first to turn away. Liu Ryan. I didn't reply to her message. I casually tossed my phone onto the back seat. Yun Suwan glanced at me from the corner of her eye and asked, Is it that girl, Liu Ryan? I nodded lightly. That girl has been completely out of line these years. She thinks everything belongs to her. She figured it out eventually. Upon hearing this, I smiled at her. How about you? Aren't you jealous? This person, she's not exactly generous. Before, you even forced me to throw away everything I brought from the Liu family to the countryside. Yun Suan didn't say anything, but soon found a secluded spot to park. She bit my lip, and with a fierce tone said, "Who told me to love you? Then I have to accept everything about your past. Besides, I'm your wife now. I won't let you slip away." I smiled and replied, "Not only will you not lose me, but I won't lose you either." After that day, I never saw Liu Ryan again. Zhonglei invited me out to play basketball, and during breaks, he couldn't help but complain about Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan is just a crazy person. Her mind's not all there. I heard from Wen Lan that on the night of my engagement, for some reason, she suddenly trashed a bar. Anyone who didn't know would think she had a crush on me. As he spoke, he couldn't help but laugh. After laughing, he continued, "Though I haven't seen Liu Ryan in a long time. A couple of days ago, Lin Ziyan even asked Wen Lan if she'd seen her. Where do you think she's gone?" I absent-mindedly dribbled the basketball. Who knows? That evening, I was blocked at my front door. Liu Ryan, reeking of alcohol, stood in my way. "Lin Qingji, I had a nightmare last night. I dreamt that you got married, and married my aunt. You tell me all of this is fake, isn't it? You said you would marry me. You said you would only love me. How could you marry someone else?" I looked at her and took out my phone to call Yun Suan. Just as the call went through, she suddenly snatched the phone from my hand and slammed it hard on the ground. Her eyes were red. "Lin Qingji, it. Say you only love me. Say you will only marry me. Say it. You and Yun Suan are both lying. It's all fake, isn't it?" She slowly knelt in front of me. Her tone was humble, as if begging. This was a Liu Ryan I had never seen before. In this state, it seemed like she truly loved me. If this were before, I would have certainly pulled her into my arms and kissed her cheek, gently comforting her. But now, things had changed. I looked down at her, my tone indifferent. "Liu Ryan, if you want to play the role of the heartbroken lover, then go find Lin Ziyan. I don't need it." She lowered her head, and I couldn't see her expression. After a long while, she finally spoke. "Lin Qingji, I already know I was wrong. I went to the countryside these past few days and saw every place you have lived in for the past 3 years. I met with the therapist you saw when you were ill. I know I was wrong. If possible, can you give me a chance? Let me make up for the hurt I've caused you these years. I can take you to a place where no one knows us. Just the two of us together. I will be the woman who loves you the most in the world. How about it? Qingji, brother." Hearing her call me Qingji, brother, I felt a little disoriented. Since Lin Ziyan had appeared, she hadn't called me Qingji, brother anymore. It had always been my full name. Now she was calling me Qingji, brother again. But I didn't feel the slightest bit of joy. "No!" I said. "I'm done with you. It's just like that jade bracelet of mine. It was broken from the start." After saying that, I walked past her, preparing to leave. She grabbed my hand, without saying anything, but I could feel her hand trembling slightly. I didn't respond, only watching the person walking toward me slowly smile. Yun Suan walked over with a serious expression. She first pulled my arm away from Liu Ryan. Then, she pulled the person on the ground up and slapped her across the face. "Liu Ryan, considering you're my niece, I'll let you off this time. But don't ever let me see you again." Don't come looking for my husband again. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. After saying that, she wiped her hands clean, then walked over and took my hand, leading me home. Meanwhile, Liu Ryan was like a broken rag, sitting motionless on the ground. She didn't move at all. Liu Ryan didn't come to find me again. The next time we met was at a seminar. She looked gaunt, and Lin Zion was by her side. I politely nodded at them, then went to find my seat. When leaving, I could feel her gaze lingering on me. During the intermission, Lin Zion found me. Lin Qingji, since you're already married to Ryan's aunt, could you stay away from her a little? Stop always trying to find opportunities to get close to her. Is that okay? Do you know how she's been these days? She's been risking her life for you. I raised my eyes to meet his. Still as self-righteous as ever. Still so annoying. I said coldly, Mr. Lin Zion. What she chooses to do has nothing to do with me. Besides, I was invited here by the organizers of this seminar. I don't have the power to control the whole event. This seminar was organized by a government department. Only those who have made contributions in their fields were invited. As long as Lin Zion isn't an idiot, he should know that there's no way I could be randomly invited here. Upon hearing this, his expression froze. Clearly, he had thought of this. He hesitated for a moment, wanting to continue. But I wasn't Liu Ryan. I wasn't going to tolerate him. I directly continued. And also, I'm Liu Ryan's aunt's husband. You're his friend. That makes me your elder as well. Has no one taught you how to speak to your elders? Upon hearing this, his face stiffened. It's not that he didn't know. He was just used to putting me in a lower position, which is why his words were so reckless. He bit his lip, hesitating for a long time, but still didn't address me as aunt's husband. And then, after seeing my smile, he gritted his teeth and said, Lin Qingji, what are you so proud of? Isn't it just because you could only get here by relying on Yun Suan? What's so great about that? Don't think I don't know. The only reason you're marrying Yun Suan is because the Yun family has more money. I didn't respond. I simply looked past him. Liu Ryan, you're just in time. Quick, take him away now. Lin Zion was taken aback and turned around to see Liu Ryan, her face dark with anger. He panicked, opening his mouth to explain. But before he could speak, Liu Ryan grabbed him and dragged him back toward the event hall. Watching him leave, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. Regret that he didn't get to see me as an outstanding representative invited onto the stage to speak. So, he still didn't know that I didn't need anyone's help. I am my own support. In the second half of the seminar, I was invited by the organizers to speak on stage. From the moment I stood up, I could feel a gaze fixed on me. It followed me all the way to the front of the stage. I didn't search for that gaze, but instead began my speech. Hello, everyone. I am Lin Qingji. As the last sentence fell, the hall erupted in warm applause. I smiled faintly and looked down at the audience. Then, by chance, I met Liu Ryan's gaze. In her eyes, there was something new I hadn't seen before. Admiration. I pretended not to notice and quietly turned my head. It wasn't until the meeting ended that Liu Ryan walked through the crowd to stand in front of me. She looked at me for a long time before slowly speaking. Lin Qingji, I didn't expect you to be so impressive now. I looked at her. I should thank you for that. 3 years ago, you sent me to the countryside with no one to rely on. In the first year, I fell into depression. And nearly the last time I was hospitalized, the patient in the bed next to mine loved taking videos. She said she wanted to record all the beautiful things in the world so that she wouldn't feel like her life was in vain. At that moment, I suddenly had an epiphany. and started learning to use videos to capture all the beautiful things around me. Then, through videos, I learned about many wonderful intangible cultural heritages. They too were striving not to be forgotten, striving to make use of their remaining value, just like me, as I searched for the meaning of my future. So, intangible cultural heritage started to appear in my videos. At first, I simply hoped they wouldn't be forgotten, because to be forgotten is to disappear. But I never expected. After the video was released, it gained a lot of attention. I became a moderately well-known video blogger. A year later, I met Yun Suan. She was ill and went back to the countryside to recuperate. At the time, I was still living in the old Liu family mansion. I would record daily life material every day. One day, while filming in the heavy snow, she suddenly appeared in front of my camera. Noticing my camera, she didn't try to hide. Instead, she smiled. She said, "You're the video blogger Chengju, right? My name is Yun Suan. I've wanted to meet you for a long time." Later, she accompanied me as we traveled everywhere, experiencing many intangible cultural heritages. During the production of a Phoenix Crown episode, I proposed to her. Thinking back to those days, I smiled slightly. When Liu Ryan saw my smile, she seemed a little lost in thought. Her expression was a mix of nostalgia and a hint of sadness. I didn't know what she was thinking, nor did I care to know. I adjusted the edge of my coat that was blown by the wind and was about to leave. Just as I was about to walk past her, she suddenly reached out her hand in front of me. Instinctively, I took a step back, and only then did I clearly see what she was holding. It was a jade bracelet. It resembled the one my parents left me by about 70%. She said, "I searched for a long time to find this jade bracelet. Look, isn't it very similar to the one you have?" Her tone held some expectation, but my attention wasn't on the jade bracelet, but rather on the scar on her wrist. A scar that looked very similar to mine. Noticing my gaze, she gave a bleak smile. "I guess there's at least one thing we both share." I raised my head to look at her. Then, I sighed. "Liu Ryan, you should know that between us it ended 3 years ago. Everything you do now is just a disturbance to me. So, please don't appear in front of me again. Is that okay?" With each word I spoke, Liu Ryan's face turned paler. After I finished speaking, I didn't look at her again. I simply walked past her. Behind me, I heard the sound of the jade bracelet falling to the ground and the sound of suppressed sobs. After that day, I really never saw Liu Ryan again. Even when I went to visit grandfather at the Liu family, I didn't run into her. Even Lin Zion had disappeared. Later, I learned that Lin Zion had moved out of the Liu family. It was Liu Ryan's decision. Also, Liu Ryan had cut off contact with Lin Zion. For a while, Lin Zion had been searching everywhere for Liu Ryan, but she always avoided him in order to find her. Lin Zion even came to look for me several times. But every time he appeared within minutes, someone would come and forcibly take him away. I asked Yun Suan, but it wasn't her. I thought that the days ahead would pass like this, but I never expected one day I would hear news about Liu Ryan in this way. Her best friend called me. With anger in her words, they said, for the past 6 months, she had been drinking heavily, almost never sober. But 2 days ago, she woke up in the middle of the night, suddenly shouting that she wanted to find me. She ended up in a car accident. She was saved, but her leg was seriously injured. She might never be able to stand again. We tried to stop her, but we couldn't. Fang Yi said, her voice hoarse. She was crying, saying, "Tomorrow is your birthday." She's already missed 3 years. She couldn't miss it again this year. She cried so heartbreakingly. It broke our hearts to watch. If we had known, we never should have let her do whatever she wanted. When Tengwan said, It's all for you. Yun Suwon leaned into my arms, looking up at me when she heard the voice. I gently pinched her little face and silently hung up the phone. Yun Suwon lifted her head and kissed my chin, gently comforting me. This isn't your fault. I know. I just find it a bit absurd. When a person is by your side, you don't cherish them. But when they're gone, why pretend to be deeply emotional? Late arriving affection is more pathetic than a dog's loyalty. I've always understood this. So, I never went to see her. 2 weeks later, in the dead of night, I received a message. It was from Liu Ryan. Lin Qingji, sorry, I didn't reply because the story between me and her had long since ended. From now on, we would have nothing to do with each other. No spring, no autumn. No connection to the wind or the moon. The end.